When the world teetered on the edge of destruction in the early 1940s, amid the rising tide of fascism and the fall of Europe to Nazi Germany, one voice rose above the chaos, that of Winston Churchill. His speeches boomed over crackling radios, through bombed-out streets, and into the hearts of millions. "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall never surrender," these weren't just words. They were a rallying cry, a lifeline for a nation under siege. But who was the man behind the microphone? How did Churchill become more than just a prime minister? How did he become the very symbol of British defiance? Born into aristocracy and forged in the fires of colonial war, Churchill was no stranger to conflict. Yet it was in Britain's darkest hour that his fierce resolve and unmatched oratory defined a generation. His leadership was not without flaws, his decisions stirred deep controversy, his strategies were debated, and his past bore marks of imperial ambition. But when democracy hung by a thread, it was Churchill's words, vision, and iron will that held the line. This is not just the story of a politician. It is the story of a voice that refused to break, a voice that defied Hitler. Winston Churchill's rise to prominence did not begin with World War II. His early political career was marked by ambition, brilliance, and dramatic setbacks. Born into the British aristocracy in 1874, Churchill entered Parliament in 1900 with a reputation for fiery speeches and bold ideas. By the time of the First World War, he had climbed the political ladder to become First Lord of the Admiralty, overseeing the Royal Navy. But his decision to support the Gallipoli campaign in 1915, a disastrous military endeavor that led to heavy Allied casualties, nearly ended his career. The failure forced him to resign, plunging him into what he would later call his wilderness years. During this period, he remained active but politically sidelined, watching events from the margins as Europe hurtled toward another conflict. Still, those years taught him bitter lessons about strategy, overconfidence, and the cost of war, lessons he would never forget. By the 1930s, Churchill's political fortunes had waned, but his voice had not. While many in Britain embraced appeasement and ignored the storm brewing in Nazi Germany, Churchill sounded the alarm with increasing urgency. He delivered speech after speech in Parliament warning of Adolf Hitler's militarization, anti-Semitism, and expansionist ambitions. His efforts were dismissed by Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's government, which sought peace at almost any cost. After the infamous 1938 Munich Agreement, where Chamberlain declared peace for our time, Churchill issued a chilling rebuke. The government had to choose between war and dishonor. They chose dishonor. They will have war. History would prove him right. The world was hurtling toward catastrophe, and Churchill saw it coming when few others dared to look. When Chamberlain resigned in May 1940, following the fall of Norway and the impending collapse of France, Churchill was asked to form a government. He became Prime Minister at Britain's darkest hour. The German war machine was sweeping through Western Europe, and Britain stood alone. Churchill addressed Parliament with grim honesty and fiery resolve. "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." Behind closed doors, not everyone supported him. Some within the government considered negotiating peace with Hitler. But Churchill's determination to fight on, whatever the cost, galvanized both the cabinet and the public. It was a defining moment. He would not bow. He would not yield. That defiance would be tested almost immediately. The Battle of Britain and the Blitz brought the war to British soil. As German bombers pounded London and other cities night after night, Churchill became the voice of courage and defiance. His speeches, broadcast over the radio, gave strength to a nation under siege. While the Royal Air Force fought valiantly in the skies, Churchill visited bombed-out neighborhoods, walking among the rubble, shaking hands, offering words of encouragement. His tribute to the RAF remains immortal, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Britain bent, but it did not break. As the war expanded, Churchill looked across the Atlantic. He cultivated a deep relationship with U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, appealing to shared democratic values and the urgent need to confront fascism. The Lend-Lease Act provided Britain with crucial supplies before America officially entered the war. Later, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin formed the uneasy but essential Big Three alliance. At key conferences, from Tehran to Yalta, they planned the path to victory, shaping the post-war world even as battles still raged. These meetings required delicate diplomacy and immense foresight, and Churchill navigated them with determination, if not always success. Strategically, Churchill had his hands in many theaters of war. From the deserts of North Africa to the coasts of Normandy, he played a critical role in shaping Allied operations. He supported bold campaigns in Italy and pushed for the cross-channel invasion that would become D-Day. Working alongside generals like Eisenhower and Montgomery, he balanced military necessity with political reality. Coordinating multiple Allied nations, personalities, and priorities was a monumental challenge, but Churchill's vision kept the ultimate goal, total victory, clearly in focus. Victory in Europe was declared in May 1945. Churchill gave a speech from the balcony of the Ministry of Health, waving to cheering crowds. Yet in a stunning twist of fate, just weeks later, his party was voted out of power. The very man who had led Britain through war was deemed unfit to lead in peace. It was a bitter blow, one Churchill accepted with characteristic stoicism. War had showcased his strengths, clarity, courage, and rhetoric. But in peacetime, the public wanted change, welfare, and rebuilding, goals better represented by the Labour Party. Churchill's legacy in World War II is complex. To many, he was the savior of Western civilization, the man who refused to surrender when all seemed lost. But his record is not without controversy. Critics point to the 1943 Bengal famine in India, where colonial policy under Churchill's watch contributed to massive suffering. Others condemn the Allied bombing of cities like Dresden, questioning the morality of total war. Still, on balance, his leadership during the war remains iconic. He was the right man at the right time, flawed, perhaps, but formidable. In the end, Winston Churchill became more than a leader. He became a symbol, the Lion of Britain, the embodiment of grit and resilience. He didn't win the war alone, and he made mistakes along the way. But without his defiance, Britain may not have endured long enough to see victory. As the final montage of his speeches plays and his 1965 state funeral rolls across the screen, one quote lingers: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." That was the heart of Churchill's wartime legacy, the courage to continue, even when hope seemed lost.